Today's news has sent shock waves through the heavy metal community as legendary guitarist and vocalist Dave Mustaine, founder of Death, has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Mustaine, who is instrumental in shaping the thrash metal genre over nearly 40 years, now faces a dramatic and tragic end to his remarkable career. Veteran music journalist Michael Rodriguez, who has followed Mustaine since the early days, commented that this isn't just the end of Death, it signifies the closing of a turbulent and highly influential chapter in metal history. What's most shocking isn't just the harshness of the sentence but how quickly things unraveled once the investigation was underway. This stunning development comes at a time when Mustaine was enjoying a career revival following Death's Grammy win for their 2016 album Dystopia and the critical acclaim of their latest release The Sick, The Dying and The Dead. Insiders have confirmed that the band's upcoming world tour has been suddenly cancelled, with millions of dollars in ticket sales now being refunded. The conviction has sent ripples through the music industry, with the financial repercussions described as devastating by a senior executive at Universal Music. Yet the impact goes far beyond money. Bandmates, road crews, and venue staff around the globe are now out of work. More importantly, the victims whose testimonies brought Mustaine to justice are finally being heard. For those less familiar with the months-long case that has dominated metal news, Mustaine's downfall began with what looked like a standard probe into financial misconduct. But as the investigation deepened, authorities uncovered a troubling history of predatory behavior spanning decades. This was carefully masked by the chaotic, rebellious persona that fans had come to associate with the metal icon. To fully grasp the weight of these revelations, one must first understand the extraordinary journey that Dave Mustaine took through the world of heavy metal. After being infamously fired from Metallica in 1983 due to issues with substance abuse, Dave Mustaine launched Death with a fierce drive to outdo and eclipse his former bandmates. Dave turned rejection into rocket fuel, recalled ex-Death drummer Chuck Belair. Fueled by a desire to prove Metallica wrong, Mustaine harnessed his bitterness into crafting some of the most technically complex thrash metal ever produced. With landmark albums like Peace Sells. But who's buying? And Rust in Peace, Mustaine cemented his status as one of metal's most distinctive guitarists and songwriters. His gritty vocals, politically charged lyrics, and blistering guitar riffs helped Death build a dedicated international fan base, selling over 38 million records worldwide. Despite battling addiction and enduring numerous controversies triggered by his provocative remarks, Mustaine held on to his stature as a metal legend. His career, however, was marred by constant personnel shifts, with more than 20 musicians passing through Death's lineup, an instability many critics attributed to his domineering and unpredictable nature. Nevertheless, Mustaine eventually found sobriety and even survived a cancer diagnosis in 2019. Music journalist Michael Rodriguez noted that his journey was widely portrayed as one of redemption, a story of conquering personal demons, embracing faith, and evolving into a respected elder figure in the metal community. That carefully crafted narrative has now been upended. An investigation into Mustaine began in 2021 after a former Death crew member came forward with serious accusations of financial misconduct and abusive behavior. What started as a complaint about unpaid wages and unsafe working conditions quickly unraveled into something far more disturbing. Lead prosecutor Rebecca Williams stated that the case soon exposed a long-standing pattern of misconduct. Multiple individuals, whose stories spanned decades, described a recurring abuse of power by Mustaine. Fearful of retaliation due to his influence and known vindictiveness toward critics, many had stayed silent for years, adding further weight to the allegations. One of the most impactful testimonies came from former bassist David Ellefson, whose highly publicized exit from Death in 2021 had already drawn attention. Ellefson admitted, "I spent most of my career making excuses for Dave's behavior." His statement shed light on the toxic atmosphere that had persisted within the band for years, ultimately playing a role in the deterioration of Mustaine's legacy. Ellefson further testified that he had spent years convincing himself that Mustaine's conduct was merely the result of artistic pressure or the stress of preserving the band's success. He acknowledged that he had been mistaken and that his silence had contributed to the harm suffered by others. As the investigation progressed, prosecutors uncovered evidence of even more troubling criminal acts. Several women came forward accusing Mustaine of using his influence to pressure young female fans into compromising situations backstage at Me Death concerts during the 1980s and 1990s. Detective Sarah Johnson, who led the investigation, stated that the pattern of abuse was both deliberate and systematic. Vulnerable fans, often grappling with their own substance abuse issues, were isolated from their friends and promised access or career opportunities, only to end up in inescapable situations. The prosecution introduced damning pieces of evidence, including marked backstage passes, personal journal entries, and most disturbingly, a collection of Polaroid photographs found in a storage unit rented under an alias tied to Mustaine. Digital forensic experts testified that the photos, which dated from 1987 to 2004, featured individuals who appeared impaired or unaware they were being photographed. Prosecutor Rebecca Williams emphasized that these weren't just examples of rock star excess but instead revealed a deliberate strategy of preying on vulnerable individuals, with the photos seemingly kept as trophies. Former tour manager Ray Wilson added to the evidence, describing an organized system that enabled and concealed Mustaine's actions. He spoke of coded language and color-coded passes used by crew members who were aware of what was taking place. Those of us who knew had to choose, stay silent or lose our jobs, Wilson testified. I'll carry the burden of my choice for the rest of my life. The revelation sent shock waves through the heavy metal community. Many artists found themselves forced to reconcile their past admiration for Mustaine with the horrifying portrait emerging from the courtroom. James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich of Metallica, both of whom had a complicated history with Mustaine, released a joint statement expressing deep dismay. "We are devastated by what has come to light," they wrote. "Although our relationship with Dave has always been complex, we never imagined the scope of the harm he was inflicting. Our hearts go out to the victims, and we urge anyone with information to speak out." Kerry King of Slayer, who had toured with Me Death during the Big Four thrash metal events, also voiced his shock during a press conference. "We all knew Dave could be hard to work with, that was part of his persona," King said. "But there's a huge difference between being a difficult bandmate and being a predator. If I had known what was happening, I would have acted. That's what I have to live with now." The case sparked a broader reckoning across the metal scene, forcing the industry to confront behaviors long dismissed as part of the rock lifestyle. In response, several prominent festivals and record labels swiftly implemented new backstage protocols and introduced reporting mechanisms to prevent misconduct and protect fans and performers alike. Music industry analyst Jennifer Blake commented, "This case goes beyond the actions of one individual. It's compelling an entire musical genre to confront the culture that enabled such behavior to persist for decades. The sex, drugs, and rock and roll mentality has often masked conduct that we now clearly recognize as criminal." During the trial, Dave Mustaine consistently asserted his innocence. His defense argued that the accusations were either fabrications from disgruntled former employees or instances of consensual encounters being reinterpreted through a contemporary lens. Attorney Robert Coleman positioned Mustaine as a scapegoat for a broader pattern of misconduct that was once tolerated within the industry. Dave Mustaine is being judged by today's standards for actions that were commonplace in the 1980s and 1990s, Coleman said. He's being targeted because of his fame and outspoken nature, while many others who engaged in the same behavior remain unpunished. To support their case, the defense called several character witnesses, including musicians who had positive professional relationships with Mustaine. Guitarist Kiko Loureiro, who joined Me Death in 2015, described Mustaine as a tough but fair leader. "The Dave I know is nothing like the person described in these allegations," Loureiro testified. "He gave me a chance when many had dismissed him, and he always treated me with respect. When Mustaine took the stand, he made a striking impression. With his signature red hair now streaked with gray, he firmly denied the most serious claims, though he acknowledged that he could be difficult to work with at times.